Brownie.
Okay, we're on. Elisa, you're muted.
Motion to call the meeting to order. Is there a second?
Lampier second. Okay.
Okay, roll call. Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
I thought trustee Lightgib was here a minute ago.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, he was.
Okay, Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, aye.
motion passes.
Oh, I wonder if he's having like technical problems or something.
Do we want to give him a minute?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, just, I mean, because Renee's not here either. Huh. Well, I'm going to ask if anybody has a disclosure or a conflict with any of the agenda items before us this evening.
Keating, I do not.
Lampier, I do not.
Plummer, I do not.
I will say about trustee Lightgib that he was here and then his picture appeared.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means he was having some kind of technical difficulty that caused him not to disappear.
He can phone into the meeting though, right? Am I correct?
Yes, he could if he needed to.
Just if it's a little wonky on his end.
Has anyone reached out to him? Here he comes.
Is he back?
Sorry about that. I had an audio problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
We
thank you.
hear you now.
Okay, well, we just did disclosure. If you have anything to disclose regarding the agenda items.
I have nothing to disclose. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Well, thanks to everybody for attending tonight. And before we begin, I would like the village clerk to just remind us of the guidelines for asking questions.
Okay, I'd be happy to. The public may speak only during the public comment period of the meeting or at such time as a majority of the board allows. Speakers must give their name, address, and organization, if any. Speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer. Speakers must limit their remarks to 3 minutes on any given topic. Speakers may not yield any remaining time they may have to another speaker. Board members may, with the permission of the mayor, interrupt a speaker during their remarks, but only for the purpose of clarification or information. All remarks must be addressed to the board as a body and not to any member thereof. Speakers must observe the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. Interested parties or the representatives may address the board by written communications. And I will further say, if you have any questions for the board, I would please request that you put them in the Q&A spot on the Zoom meeting, and please include your name and address, and then we will address it to the board. Or if you would like to speak and if the board is entertaining comments, you can raise your hand in the attendee section and we will call on you as appropriate. Thank you.
I would remind everyone that this is a special meeting and was called because there are items on this agenda that require immediate attention from the board, and that we address specifically these items tonight. We do have a regularly scheduled meeting next Tuesday, so we can address other things at that time as well. I do want to also say we're going to start with, I'm moving one item up. I'm moving the bridge construction wear and tear study up, so Zach doesn't have to sit through the whole meeting. I asked him to be here. This is regarding Shane Place and you know, the effects really of all the traffic being routed through there due to the bridge closure and construction. And I've had this discussion with Zach about some of the issues that we're seeing on Shane Place that are going to be much longer term. And Zach, maybe you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yes, a few months ago before the State Street Bridge project started, we had discussed bringing SRF and to do a speed study or traffic study on Shane Place, to get an idea of what the count of cars moving through there on a daily basis would be before and during construction, during the detour. Excuse me. So we missed our opportunity to do it before. And so we're thinking about starting it now, doing it during, and then also another one during and after, just to kind of get an idea of what the traffic situation looks like.
And the logic is that we then ask for some funds to help repair some of the maintenance, but we have a good comparison. Hey, it took this much more wear and tear when the bridge was closed, and hey, DOT, help us pay for these repairs.
Right, right. This is really to provide data to NISTOT to make our case, because we have already, well, Zach, we brought it up in the last meeting we had with them, and they didn't seem particularly interested in helping us. So I think, you know, collecting the data and showing them that we really, it is having an incredibly deleterious effect on Shane Place with the rerouting of, and I think everybody's seen it, the big trucks going through, you know, it's really been an increase. I don't know if anybody else on the board has thoughts on this. Yes, Lily? Lily, you're mute. Thanks.
I got it. I have a question regarding the protocol and cost. Are we going to be sending this out to bid? Looking for several different firms to provide the traffic information for us, or are we going to go with Ferranti and use the justification that they have done all of our traffic studies in the past and are uniquely situated to do this one as well? And what kind of cost are we anticipating?
I have a call into SRF now, because I know, frankly, it may be less expensive to go with them because they have older traffic studies that they've done. And I believe they did one on Shane Place a while back. I'm not sure how long ago that was. Maybe somebody else could recall that. So that could actually be an additional reference point that they've already conducted that study. So I entertain any thoughts from the board. I think SRF knows the village. They've pretty much studied every inch of it at this point. And I don't think, Zach, we were trying to recall what the cost was of the last study. Does anybody remember, what was it, Maple? Or was it South?
The last study was done on South.
South, okay.
And I offhand, I can't remember what the cost was for that. But
Yeah.
I wanted, it was under $2,000.
Yeah, I think it was, for some reason, that number is sticking with me, that it was under 3,000. But either way, I would like to follow up, at least with SRF, to kind of get a handle around this. Any other thoughts from the board?
And to underline, the reason this is being covered now is we're running out of time while the increased traffic will be there. So we got to get a study commissioned and execute the study before the bridge reopens, which might be as early as July.
Right. Well, mid-July, roughly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's why I just wanted to bring it to the board for discussion tonight. Any?
Okay. Yes, I would at least move forward with getting an estimate from Ferranti so we know exactly what we're anticipating.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, and Justin, you had your hand up?
Having more data seems like a good thing, so I support this initiative in general, and moving forward with getting a couple of quotes seems like a reasonable next step.
Okie doke. Sounds like a plan. Yes, Dan.
Who is responsible for getting those quotes? Is that Zach? Is it Dorothea? Is it a trustee? Who is it?
I can do it. Zach,
Well,
yeah, go
Let's
ahead.
see what SRF comes back with, because if it falls under the criteria for needing more quotes, then it might not be necessary. So
Right, that's
I
true.
think that's a good place to start, and we'll go from there.
Yep. I mean, I already have a call into them. I've worked with them in the past as well. So at least if they can give us some kind of an estimate, then we know at least what we're working with. And then as Zach said, move forward if we need to or not. Look for another bid.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah, Justin?
There is also a public question about the North Main Street Bridge closing schedule and impact of this study.
But before we move on to that, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Which of you, I just want to assign a name to a to-do list, to-do action. Which of you is going to make the call?
That would be me yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
In
you.
other words, I've already put a call into them anyway, just in case they already had an old study, that they had already conducted for us. That was, the initial intent of that particular call. Yeah. Yeah. The questions should be coming through Dorothea.
Sorry, muted. The question is, when is North Main Street Bridge closing scheduled and the impact with this study?
I don't think that has been confirmed yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we
I'm
don't
not
have,
even sure that's legitimately on the list of work that they're going to be doing at this point.
yeah, they brought it up. They do, but they do not have it confirmed on their list. If possible, it may be sometime next year, but we have no confirmation yet. And if work, for that matter, if work were to be done on Shane Place, it may make more sense than knowing if, say, for example, the North Main Bridge is going to be closed and there's going to be all kinds of back and forth again with construction, to not redo the road until after the next bridge is done. Zach, you may have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, exactly that. There's no sense in repairing anything on that road until all this construction is done.
Yeah,
Especially once we find out if, due to the increase in traffic, if it is, if it's that heavy, there's just no sense in it.
yeah.
Okay, and for the record, that was David Ferris who
Thank
asked
you.
that question. And I don't think the study would have any impact, right? They just lay, what is it, those ropes across or the electronic readers across the road? That's not
Yeah.
gonna impact.
Most likely either that or they'll have something similar to what our speed sentry is, but just to count cars as they're going through there. Not exactly sure what they have for equipment, but that's a question we can ask.
Yeah, we can get that information for people. Okay, just wanted to bring it before the board. The action item is that I will follow up then with Mr. Ferranti and report back. Okay, great. Oh, got a saw nodding, thumbs up. Thank you. Zach, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
great evening.
You too.
Okay. Next item up, the Community Project Emergency Tree Relocations and Donation Program. I'm following up on our discussion last week regarding the approximately 160 to 180 trees that were planted about 8 weeks ago. And you all had the report from one of the master gardeners, actually two master gardeners, but Stacy Shedden gave us the report and made recommendations about possibly relocating the trees to save them because there's no invasive remediation plan in place except for in a couple of areas. And as cited in that plan, that would have been the first step would be to start with that invasive remediation program, because what's happening now for a vast number of the trees is that the invasives will always outcompete the natives. And so it's stressing out the native trees and ultimately they will win. They're invasive. So the thought was to work with our community and possibly set up some type of a program where our neighbors, our community residents could come in and get a tree and rehome it in their yard. They're wonderful native trees, and they could do this with a small donation. A fund would be set up for the 10-acre parcel over there. So those funds for the donations for the trees that the neighbors get would be put right back into that area of public land for whatever that plan is as we move forward in the future. So I'm bringing this back to the board for discussion. These are assets of the village. There have been several $1,000s spent, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to handle these assets because they are going to be, they're dying. And some of them also are planted in the incorrect locations as noted in the report. So it's just an opportunity, I think, maybe to spread the trees around in the community, maybe start some kind of a reserve fund and move forward with a plan. Any thoughts? And this would be sooner than later. We would address this right away because, you know, the plants are all there and need homes. And we're not in the business of being a nursery. You know, our DPW is just not set up for that right now. We don't have a plan in place for that. Anybody? Yeah, Justin? Sure.
Sure. I wondered actually if we could start out with reading some public comments into the record in order to help our discussion along, because I believe that we got a couple of emails to the board. And I also saw one public comment from someone else who appears to be a master gardener in the chat. So I do have some comments of my own, but I wonder if we could also broaden this and accept some public input to get things started.
Sure, of course, always. Yes, Dorothea.
Hold on.
Name and address.
That's what I'm waiting for this
Oh.
lady. She didn't provide an address. I asked her to provide an address.
Oh, okay, okay.
All the other public comments I I sent on to the board, and that was prior to this meeting. It wasn't directed for this meeting.
Mhm.
If the board needs them, I'll have to go and search for them. I'll wait for direction from you.
No, I read those and yeah.
Yep. read
Okay,
this well.
I have an address now. This is from Sue Julian at 56 Monroe Ave. Her comments are, why wasn't the original arborist who consulted on the creation of the Arboretum involved in the tour and the subsequent report that was presented at the last meeting? I am also Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardener, and we are instructed at Cornell to recommend a certified arborist from the International Society of Arborists. Local list when clients request help with tree issues. Are either the master gardeners who provide the report arborists?
Subsequent to that, one of the master gardeners brought back an arborist to go through, and he concurred with the recommendations. We also are in touch with the director of the Cornell Extension Program. And the way it works, and I'm sure Sue knows this as well, because I'm a master gardener too. Master gardeners are always sort of the front lines. They're a wonderful point of reference. It can help with a number of projects, but they also have the capacity, and in this case, they have done this, to use the full complement of resources through Cornell. And that's what the intention was and has always been with the two master gardeners who originally walked the site, because it is such a large project, and they clearly understood that the first place would be to save the trees and deal with the remediation of the invasives. So I think we're all really on the same page with that. In terms of the person who supplied the trees, maybe prior board members could speak to that. I did speak with him on the phone, and he said he was told to drop off the tree, bring the trees. That was it. So as far as I know, maybe Lily or somebody else can speak to that about what was said or done in terms of working with him.
I can say that what he stated was true,
Mhm.
that trees were purchased and he delivered them.
Yeah.
He also planted them.
Mhm.
And he didn't have a specific plan that he was working from. I know that because I asked for it.
Mhm.
And he said that he was there to plant the trees, and that's what he did. And that native trees did not necessarily require a formal layout, because that's not the way it occurs in nature.
Mhm.
And so that was one statement that was made. Also, we received
Mhm.
an email from Carol Meisenthal, and in it she had some connections, links to Cornell,
Mhm.
and the Cornell program, and a specific
Mhm.
professor at Cornell. And I personally would like more information regarding that and that issue. And I was wondering if the gentleman from White Oak would consider speaking to us so that we are looking at all
Mhm.
aspects, not just from a gardening aspect, but also from a forestry aspect.
So,
And we have the whole picture.
right, sure, absolutely. And I think we're all coming at the same conclusion from different directions. Cornell has one of the top forestry programs, as we all know. And so the contacts that people are sending in through the master gardeners, we are already working up through to those same contacts. So I think we're all kind of on the same page with this. In terms of bringing back in Jim Engel, of course, I've heard him lecture a number of times myself. So that's all fine. My concern right now is the status of assets that were purchased by the village that may be dying because there was never a plan in place for the remediation of invasives on the site. I don't know, maybe you all have other feelings about that. I'm concerned about it. Yes, Dan.
Can you confirm the price of the trees that we bought? Were they $10 a head?
I know that the bill for the trees was $2,032.50.
And how many were there?
Well, some of them were sent back because, and actually, Mr. Engel didn't really plant most of the trees, I don't believe. Most of it was done by DPW. So I don't know that there was, Steve, yeah, maybe you have some more information about that you were nodding.
I just do know that DPW planted a good number of those trees, not the gentleman who dropped them off, but I do know that DPW and just from walking the site, just so everybody does know, there is quite a number of those that are not going to survive very long. They're either dying already or they're buried because they're not being maintained at all. The invasives and the weeds are choking them out. You're going to lose probably 25% of what's there right now very soon. So as the mayor said, as an asset to the village and what we spent money on, something needs to be done to either maintain them and clear the areas and clear the tree, which costs labor and time, which we're not really set up for. So, something needs to be done in the interim now to save what's there, and then you can do a ton of studies or whatever, but I believe something needs to be done very soon or you're going to lose a good majority of the assets that this village spent money on.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Justin.
Yeah, I would like to read into the record the email that we received from Carolyn Galvin and also from Mike Reynolds. And I see that Bob Corby also has his hand up. And I would like to welcome that feedback from the public so that we could use that to further our discussion.
Well, the letters sent in are already part of the record, I believe. They're already in the record.
Can I get confirmation from our clerk on that to make sure that those are going to appear in the minutes?
They will not appear in the minutes. I'm not going to cut and paste them into the minutes. I'll add them to the end of the minutes. They will be an attachment. They don't need to be into the minutes that way.
That's pretty standard stuff to do it that way. So they will in fact be part of the record. Yes, Dan.
Okay.
I didn't get to finish the point on the cost.
Yeah.
So we're in a little bit of a limbo stage. And if we can recoup the cost on unused trees, I don't see why that would be a bad idea. And then use that money at a later time when we're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And understand that there are funds from, what was it? From the energy funds, for people signing up. I'm blanking on the name.
CCA.
Thank you, CCA. And some of that was to be directed towards the purchase of the trees. But whatever check we received from them would go into this separate account as part of the funds to go back, to be put back in to this parcel. When we have the plan, when we have the eradication program, further along with invasives, when we know that we've done our seeker, we've done all, all the things that we need to do to make sure that things are being put in place properly. That's all. I mean, I think it's, there's not a downside to this. We all want the same thing. We want to have a beautiful public space that's preserved without invasives.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to discuss here. I find issue with the notion of mitigating invasives by getting rid of the native trees. And I think that, that there's still more that I'd like to discuss, but I do see that the public would also like to hear some of the emails.
Yes, I understand. We will have public comment, but I want to say it's not about getting rid of natives. It's about the fact that there's invasives there now with a ratio of roughly 10 to 12 invasives for every one native. And the reason why we use the term specifically invasive is that they invade and outcompete any natives that are there. So if you have young trees trying to survive and you have an invasive plant, the invasive plant will win. That's what we're trying to say. So it's not about getting rid of trees. In my mind, it's about saving the trees, rehoming them as best we can. Some of them can stay. Some of them, even the Master Gardener said, hey, some of them are in a good spot. Let's try to keep them and make sure that the invasives don't take over. But others, we're concerned because when you're up there, and I would love to walk this with, have all the trustees walk this with the arborist and the other, I don't know if it's the director of the program at the Cornell Extension, but this is important. This isn't just about getting rid of trees. This is really about how we properly manage and steward this property with all these invasives. So if we have people who can put a beautiful native tree in their yard right now and maybe make a donation that'll go back into that land, I see that not as a negative outcome, but as still a positive outcome, because we have more work to do with this. We want to do this right. It's nothing more than that. There's no us against them. We all love trees. We all love native plants. That's the starting point. And we all know we want to do what's best for that land.
So may I again?
Yes.
So I will suggest that we read the letters from the public into the record. I know that they'll appear, but I think that that is a part of our discussion and the public does not know what was sent to us. And I also see a couple of public comments. I do have some other thoughts on this matter that I would like to share, as well as some data from discussions that I've had. But I do think that it's important to hear the public on this. And I think that your goal is the right one. We should all be aligned with doing the right thing environmentally for this parcel of land. And we do want to restore this to a native, healthy forest. And I think that the issue here has been that the way that we've tried to do this by programs to remove the invasives and replant native plants has been halted. And right now we're actually talking about, in my mind, what looks like a further step back, which is removing the native trees, which are actually doing quite well. And I know that that is contrary to what we've heard. I have my own thoughts on this matter, and I'd like to share some more information. But I think that this is the right juncture to hear from the public. So again, I would motion that we hear the letters from the public and listen to other comments.
Yeah, sure. Dan, Trustee Keating has his hand up, and then I do have a question for our village attorney after that, before we seek public comment. Dan?
Just the questions for Justin in response to his statement there. Why did we halt this, Justin? Why did we press pause on this?
There were some issues with the initial plan. Steve and Jeff Turner have cited that we needed seeker and site plan and LWRP and stormwater. I've noted that we actually needed some of the same things in terms of things we've done around Village Hall since that time. So for example, we've planted some coniferous trees around the Village Hall, which seems to require site plan according to our code. We've covered over about 1/10 of an acre of the Arboretum with gravel, which also seems to perhaps require stormwater review. There have been a number of other actions that might also require further review according to our standards. So I think that while I understand that we want to be adherent to our own procedures and code, I think that we want to be consistent here too. And I'm not sure that we're doing that in this regard.
I'd like to respond to that, and maybe Steve would like to add just to that as well. There was a response to the clear cutting and the clearing of the land that required immediate attention. So silt fences went in, check dams went in, immediate remediation went in for invasive knotweed because it was coming right back. So there was for lack of a better word, it was an emergency. I mean, Steve, you may want to speak to that as well, as you saw. You made your findings. I mean, we all stood by Steve's findings.
Yeah, the two things, Justin, you know, I'm actually not supposed to address anybody directly, but there's two issues here. There's already existing garden in the village hall area, so to do a little adjusting in the garden is a lot different than clear cutting almost a half an acre. The invasives that were immediately coming back on the one area that they cover with the gravel and the plastic was done to try and remediate the re-emerging knotweed that's instantly coming back. Now our DPW, and this is no disrespect to them, they're not set up to do this. They did what they thought was best in order to try and start remediating the knotweed up there. But we, as a municipality, and that division is not gardeners. They're not land managers. They aren't set up. They don't have the equipment to do this. That's why it was halted. If you look at what they did up there, it was rough. The one lady who was part of this went up there and literally was almost in tears to the fact that she said what was done was devastating. It was her terms, a master gardener, one of the ladies who initially set up the program, her term was devastating, which means something immediately had to be done. Now, you know, there are many ways it could be done. We're trying to do this, or we started trying to do this in a way to keep the village out of any kind of trouble. If you want to correlate a couple of plants at the village hall to what was done up there, I think you're barking up a very, very interesting tree. That's all I'll say. The fact of what was done up on that land was wrong, pure and simple. Could have got us in a ton of trouble. Luckily, it didn't. We handled it in a way to hopefully keep the village out of any legal or financial problem with what happened there. This could turn out, or could have turned out, a lot worse than it has so far. And do you say that plants up there are doing well? Walk up there. Look at what's being smothered. Look at how many you can actually find that were planted. I beg to tell you that you will not be able to find 50% of what's already up there that is buried by invasive. The only reason you'll be able to tell they're there is because there's a stick and a cage. Other than that, you wouldn't find them. And that to me is a travesty of spending that kind of money and putting those trees in a place that wasn't properly prepared.
Jeff, I just had a question for you. We did receive the letters from people and they're going into the minutes. Should we read them into the minutes, or they are a matter of public record and will be made available to the public? I mean, that's part of what happens.
That's entirely up to the board. Once they're in the record, you've satisfied your obligation.
They're submitted to the record. I mean, we're trying, this is a special meeting. I'm trying to convey the sense of urgency. They're part of the record. Yes, Dorothea.
Real quick, I guess I'm looking for a little clarification too, Jeff. These letters were received as direct comments from the previous meeting, nor were they requested to be a part of a future meeting. So that's why I didn't anticipate them coming up for this meeting. I just directed them to the board as, people's comments from the last meeting. So
Oh, that was my assumption then, that they were going to be. entered
I'm
into
not
the record.
I didn't anticipate that they were comments for this meeting because
Oh,
this
I
meeting
see.
hadn't even been scheduled at that point.
Okay, I just assumed they would go into that record. That was me. Maybe they should be part
Or
of the
they were
record.
close.
I thought Dorothea just said that they were going to be part of the minutes.
I can't add them if the board requests. I can attach.
I
them
think they
to-
should be added, absolutely. They're comments from the public. Well, I did want to bring this up as an aspect of discussion. We certainly can continue this discussion at Tuesday's meeting. It's important that some action be taken one way or the other soon. Yep.
So it seems that there is some feeling that those letters should not be read into the record at this point. They are directly related to the content of this meeting since they discuss the professional opinions upon which we are being asked to base our decisions. And I believe that they're relevant to this content and this discussion, and they should be presented. But at this point, as long as they're going to be in the minutes, we can go beyond that. I would like to, since it's been mentioned that we should take a walk through the Arboretum, perhaps we could do that if you'd allow me to share my screen for a moment. I
Sure.
will, it looks like screen sharing is disabled. Would those be able to enable screen sharing?
Yes, Dan, excuse
So-
me, before we start in, Dan.
I get all this and it makes a lot of sense. Sure, public comment is great and wonderful. My concern is we don't have everybody here who we need, and that's the consultants that we've brought in. So let's say somebody makes the world's best point in the emails to us.
Mhm.
That's about something that happened a few days ago. I don't want to relitigate what we've already done.
Mhm.
We're here to make a decision, a timely one, and going through everything that's happened. I don't know that we need to do that. We can if we want. It's going to take a lot of time,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure it's going to help us with the decision that we need to make tonight.
well, thank you. Or what we can do, because Renee isn't here as well, we certainly could put it on the agenda for on the 8th. Yes, Steve.
I would say at a minimum, if there is live public comment or people who want to discuss this, that would be prudent to probably, because we talked about public comment in the beginning of the meeting.
Mhm.
As far as reading the letters, I agree with Dan, but as far as the people who are sitting waiting to speak, that would probably be prudent.
Yeah, I agree, Steve.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement about that. It's just, the letters are going in as part of the record. That was the original discussion. Yep. Okay, Dorothea.
Lily's.
I'm
I'm
sorry, I was
Lily,
waiting
I'm
for
sorry.
Dorothea to answer Justin's question.
Which question was I answering? I thought I did. The letters will be included with the minutes, and if the board is ready for public comment, I will start with the hand raise of Mr. Corby. This is up to the board.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to give some background on what we did at the Arboretum. The plan that we followed in having the plantings done followed the recommendations that were included in the comprehensive plan. The reason we had the vision for the Arboretum from its inception has been to allow it to transition into an indigenous native northern hardwood plant community. And hoping that the process of its transition over many years with incremental plannings like were done this year would help with the transition. I applaud the tarping of the Japanese knotweed. That was the action that we actually talked about and would have occurred and was planned. So I congratulate the board for continuing that. Forestry doesn't require seeker. It's a type, a type 2 action, I believe, always, and that's always the case. The original plan was with Jim Engel was to overseed the area with native meadow plants, which would have helped crowd out the invasives that are on the property. When the planning was stalled, that allowed the invasives to get a foothold, and that's what's happening now. I would argue, though, that the DPW under my supervision had the capability to do gardening. In fact, we do that every year because all of those Rosa rugosas along Shane Place, as well as the plants at Village Hall and in Remembrance Park, are mulched, and in the medians at Washington Road and North Main Street. Mulching and watering would certainly rescue the plants that are in place. Most of them are doing pretty well, is my understanding. The other thing I would say is the reason, the advantage of planting native plants, and I talked at length with Jim Engel before these plants were planted, is they don't require any site preparation. You don't use a butcher to bake a cake. You don't use a gardener to do forestry. And this project really is about forestry. And I would expect if you're going to change it or try to change the mission, that you consult with somebody who's qualified as a forester. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Is there a statement that or a resolution from the prior board about forestry and the mission on that property? And also because I think Bob really raised a really good point. You mentioned that DPW really does a great job with gardening and also mentioned that gardening isn't forestry. So I think in many respects, your comments reinforce some of the things that we've been talking about earlier, and I thank you for that. Next comment.
Okay. Margot Foss. She has several, so I'm going to just read all her comments at one time. One remediation that was done was to remove all of the tree of Heaven. Also, if the milkweed had been sowed as planned, there would have been fewer invasives. Gravel on the soil is not keeping out the Japanese knotweed is coming back. On the other hand, I am for saving the trees that need to be saved. She lives at 65 State. Bravo for saving assets. I wasn't at the last meeting. Who is the master gardener? Is he or she on your green committee? It would seem that an assigned committee of master gardeners would be gathered and come to a mutual signed recommendation rather than just deciding what to do now because of some remarks from interested persons. How do you choose which trees to move and which to leave? Haste makes waste as well, as we all know so well. Okay. So that's.
Were their name, was that all from?
That was all
Dr.
from
Foss?
Margot
Thank you so
Foss.
much. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ferris, he indicated he would like to hear the letters. And then we go to Marty Martina, 30 Locust Street. He says, 1, I looked at each individual tree and I did not find one that was stressed or dying. That was 2 days ago. 2, what is the urgency? Please explain in detail. 3, I am opposed to giving away the assets off of the village. 4, it makes more sense to deal with the invasive species. It's ridiculous to suggest that only option is to remove the trees. If the trees are removed, what is the plan to immediately replace them? At what cost? Again, to village taxpayers. 6, if the issue is the location of the planting of the trees, why not move the trees within the arboretum? 7, what about a volunteer group to care for the existing stock of trees? I'd be happy to help as stated. Currently, no one is making an effort to maintain them. So the only solution being to remove them is again ridiculous. Okay.
Can I, okay, sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Did you want to answer those and then I'll go
Yeah, I was
further?
just gonna say, because there's a lot there. I think this isn't about just simply taking out all the trees that were put in, as I mentioned earlier. As I said, the master gardeners brought back in a master arborist who readily identified all the trees because so many of them aren't tagged. Also identified invasives. The program really would be to mark the rest of the invasives, identify what we can keep and retain there, and then relocate the trees that just are not going to make it. And I'm sure people, thought that they were looking at all the trees, and maybe you did look at over 160 trees if you looked at each one. I'm not sure that you were able to, because some of them really were overgrown with invasives. I've been up to that site many times. Also, in terms of a plan for the site, we have findings. We have findings from our code enforcement officer, and also Steve is certified as the stormwater consultant. So we have steps that we need to take as a village. The findings were seeker type 1. Am I correct? Am I missing something? Jeff and Steve, please weigh in. These findings were made public weeks ago. They were brought before this board. The community was made aware of this. We have an LWRP. We have stormwater issues. What else am I missing? Steve?
I mean, anybody is welcome to look at our code.
Yeah.
And see the thresholds in our code. This isn't county code, it's state code. This is code that was written in the village to maintain or a certain level of land disturbance, which was, it was way over the thresholds. That's thresholds that are made part of this village's laws.
Yes,
I didn't make them.
Thank you, Justin.
I believe the topic that we're currently discussing, though, is a program where we would move and donate certain trees. I'm not disputing
Not donating.
the findings of the, okay, if you'd like to clarify, go ahead.
No, as I said before, there would be a fee that would be donated to a reserve fund for monies to go back into the land. These are assets of the village. We are not gifting them out of the village. What we're doing is, you know, for, I don't know, $10, you can get a beautiful native tree. And then that money goes right back into an account to be put back into that parcel of land. So we're not giving away things from the village. These are assets of the village that we're worried about losing because there is no plan in place. Yes, Lily.
Thank you. I believe the question earlier that I asked Dorothea was Justin had requested to share his screen and he was unable to do so. That was the question that I was.
You know, first of all, I'm thinking we should carry this right over until Tuesday. This is a special meeting. It looks like, you know, we're getting into presentations, we're getting into a lot of stuff. I would prefer, Justin, frankly, the information that you have, if you could forward that to the board, and so it'll be in the packet for the next meeting. I think that would be great.
If I may.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but it is on the agenda for this evening, and I'm perfectly content to continue discussing it. I think that's what some people have come for, and I think that we should go ahead. And we can continue discussing at the next meeting, but at least this way it's all out in the public so that the public
Well, it
can
will
weigh
still
in.
be made public. Again, this is a special meeting. It sounds like this is clearly well beyond the scope of what I thought this was going to be in terms of a lot of information coming out. I certainly think it's only fair to the rest of the board to be able to review the information as well before it's presented. And so why don't we do that and we'll present it at the next meeting. Dan?
Here's how I understood the ask for this. I understood the ask was, we have a bunch of trees that are not thriving and could die.
Mhm.
And so let's figure out what to do with them while we figure out what we're going to do. And we've all agreed, all the trustees, we hit pause on this thing and we're going to do this thing right. But we have a time sensitive thing, which is why we've done a special meeting. So
Right.
I don't understand why we're relitigating the whole thing. All I really want to talk about are those trees that are going to
Mhm.
die and what are we going to do with them?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Let's-
Yes, Justin.
Sure. Well, let's take a look at those trees then, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen. So and I think that what is at stake is looking at the trees, and I did that this morning. Can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing with the map?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse
So
me, Justin, one thing very quickly. How long will this take?
Well, I've got some information, and I think that if the point of this meeting was to discuss an emergency of
Right, well, the
trees that were
last meeting
dying.
went over 4 hours. This is
I
a
understand.
special meeting, and I'm really trying to move the business of the village along, and I appreciate all this information, and I know clearly you've all done research, Some of this, as I said, we certainly could carry it over to the next meeting.
I-
So I'm hoping this is going to be just a couple of minutes.
I appreciate that. So let's look at some trees. I understand from the findings of the master gardener that some of the trees were distressed. That claim is being repeated at this meeting. I walked the Arboretum this morning and I spent about half an hour going from fenced area to fenced area. And I looked at 67 trees, which is over a third of all the trees. I did not skip any trees. Every one that I came across, I took pictures of. And you can see my tracks in the Arboretum here. And every single tree that I looked at was healthy and it was thriving. So I'm just going to go through some slides here. And again, this was not selective. This is absolutely everything that I came across. So you see a coniferous tree here from when I started the walking at 8:25. And here is a sugar maple that was planted, no invasives that are overcrowding it certainly. And another sugar maple that is doing just fine. You do see cases where there is quite a bit of crowding. This is a sugar maple, and I think that you've got some invasive mugwort, it might be, that's crowding it out.
Mugwort, yes.
And that needs some attention. Some of these certainly need some attention. But here you can see that even though there's a lot of crowding, the tree is still doing well inside of this cage. And here's an oak that is doing beautifully inside of the cage.
It's a pin oak.
And so, you know, I think that going through these, and I'm obviously not going to comment on every single one, but you can see that there are 67 trees here. Some are quite crowded, but I think we'll get to a slide here where I actually did a little bit of weeding just to see how this would go. I don't know if I've pulled out too much mugwort before, but here I just grabbed a handful and it comes right out with the roots in just a second. So, you know, this is quite an achievable weeding task, even for someone like me, who doesn't know a whole lot about gardening. But I saw a lot of native trees that are doing really well as they've been planted.
Could I
need a
interject
little bit of
something
attention.
just very quickly, because I think you're pointing out some really, really interesting things. The trees are really looking good right now. The problem is over time. They're planted quite close together. Some of these trees get to over 50 feet tall and 30 feet wide, and they're within, you know, a few feet of each other, or, you know, 10 feet of each other. So what was identified again in the report is they're looking, maybe some of them, you're right, are looking okay now, but their long-term survival may be at issue. So there's short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And I appreciate you going in and taking those pictures. And I would like all the trustees to walk this together with the arborist. I think that's important.
So if I may continue here, I was still going through this, and I'd appreciate to be able to finish with some of the data that I've collected here, because I understand this meeting was called for emergency purposes about the trees, and I've been studying the trees and talking to people about the trees.
Okay, thank you.
And I've gotten quite different information than what
Yes,
the master gardener who presented the last meeting gave to us. So again, every single tree, every single thing that was planted is thriving and doing well, but it needs a little bit of attention. You do get down to the bottom of the area, and there is 0.15 acres that has been fenced off and covered in landscape fabric and a lot of gravel. I'm not sure what the point of this is. And I've also spoken to some other people. They're not quite sure what the point of this is. It seems like a significant expense, and it doesn't really seem to be helping the area to reestablish. I know there's knotweed. You could use fabric to take care of that, but I'm thinking, you know, I look at areas like this, and I'm saying, why didn't we take as a village the expenses that were put towards the gravel and just, you know, grabbed a couple of handfuls of mugwort. So maybe Steve can, I see he's got his hand up, and I'd like to hear his thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point of me talking about the DPW. And like I said, this is no offense to DPW. The plastic was put down to remediate the knotweed, but then they put stone over it because they didn't know how to secure the plastic to kill the invasives. So a ton of money was thrown into a spot to try and do remediation that they are not set up for. So now that gravel will have to be removed at some point at a further expense.
Well, okay.
Who authorized that?
I'm sorry, Lily. I just wanted to speak directly to the gravel. I had asked them to put the plastic down and then put stones around the edge so it would continue to solarize, because that's what you do with the knotweed. And I know all the master gardeners here this evening recognize that that is a way to eradicate over time invasive species, is through solarization, and it does take time. When I spoke to them, when I found out that they put the gravel on, they said, we can reuse the gravel in other areas. They had the extra gravel and just put it down there. They didn't put the stones on the edge. It's not the worst thing that's happened in the world. It can be solved. Yes, Lily.
It was the expense that Steve mentioned. There's a lot of editorializing going on tonight,
Mhm.
I'm afraid. And I would, I think maybe when we meet the next time to talk about this,
Mhm.
perhaps a mention of the very beginning of
Mhm.
how this transpired, because I recall that, yes, we did have a report from the building inspector. I do not recall the board voting on that report. It was the presentation merely. I do not recall a vote. So I would like a discussion around that. We're hearing a lot from the building inspector editorializing about this was the worst. It was awful. It was wrong. I think it's up to the board to determine what's
Yeah,
wrong.
it is up to the board, for sure. Yeah, I
Thank you.
understand that. Thank you. No, absolutely. Yes. Okay, yes, Justin.
Thank you. My visit, just to recap of the area this morning, contrary to the opinions that we've heard expressed today and the opinion from the master gardener where trees were dying, all of the trees were thriving. And I want to be clear with that. The second thing is that I did some outreach, and I wanted to mention, even though we're not reading the full email from Carolyn Galvin to the board tonight, I did want to mention that she did say that she had some concerns that a master gardener is not the person who should be giving this opinion. We have, and you can go to Google Earth, you can see that the majority of this parcel is a forest. And we're looking to reestablish some of the areas to a healthy forest. So that's a separate profession. And I'm not an expert in either of those areas, but I know that's a separate profession. So
yeah, I'd like to speak to that.
If I could actually,
I thought you were done.
not quite, thanks.
Okay.
So I did do some outreach. I wanted to talk to some people. Elise, I know that you said you were going to contact the garden club, and I hope that you're still planning on following through with that.
Oh, absolutely.
If you haven't already.
Sure. I also, clubs. Yeah.
Great. I also reached out to the original arborist who planted the trees. So I reached out to Jim Mangle. I spoke with him, and his impression was that, and this is before I had taken a close look at the trees, and I got him on the phone immediately, and he said that even if the trees did look distressed, which is not the case, he said that it wouldn't justify uprooting them because that would actually cause more stress. In fact, what you want to do is just mulch them, water them, and maybe do some weeding of the nearby area, and you would not reassess until fall. And in fact, if you went and dug them up now and gave them away, you would cause more stress and probably kill them. And so that would not be a recommended course of action. I also spoke with Patty Love, and she has quite a bit of experience in this area. She has consulted with the town on their pollinator garden, and she concurred with Jim Mangle's opinion on that, that you would not want to follow this course of action of uprooting the trees that seem like they're not doing well. So, and of course, there are no trees that don't seem to be doing well. I can't find those. So, I appreciate this discussion, but I just, it seems to me after this research that I've done that the emergency is not that we have to get rid of the trees. The emergency, if any, is that we just have to take care of a couple of them.
The emergency is that we have to get rid of the trees that are not thriving, and there were some that were identified prior to this. But let me just speak for one minute. Let me just speak for 1 minute, because the master gardeners, you're right, they're not arborists. So the first thing the two master gardeners who originally walked that property did was to call the arborists who walked the property. So we certainly can get arborists back in, and I would like to do that and walk the property, actually with all the trustees, because I think it's important that if we're all going around and around, I think it's important that we all look at the same things at the same time together with people who have the expertise. So again, I want to just say something about the master gardeners. They recognize when they need to bring in additional resources. And they did. So let me just finish. Would the trustees be willing to at least take a walk together on the preserve? And, you know, if we can get Jim Engel, great. If we can get other arborists or a couple arborists. So we're all seeing this together and we're all making these decisions based on the empirical data that we all see together. Yes, Dan?
So I just want to go back and Steve, I want to give you a little bit of support. I didn't much care for the prior characterization of your words. I never heard you say the worst or what was the other one? A disaster. The way that your work was characterized, I found disrespectful. So I did just want to, I found your work to be very professional in this regard and just wanted to show you some support in that.
Thank
in
you.
that area. Yeah.
Yes, Justin.
Thank you. I think that, you know, this has been my intent as well to bring all the data to the table,
Mhm.
and I would certainly welcome an opportunity to walk through the Arboretum again. And in fact, so I in my discussion with Jim Engel, he said that he would come out and walk around with us. In that case, I think it would be fair to pay him his consulting fee, which he mentioned to me is $150. And I think that would be a very fair price to pay if the board would like to do that. Because, you know, as I've mentioned, there does not seem to be an emergency or a crisis here.
Well, some of
and
the
I
trees
think
that were not thriving, there was and is still.
Sure,
But
you know,
we're past that
Yeah.
now, I think. I think we
So-
need to wrap this up. And I
Well-
think if we're all agreeing, we're going to walk, we can hopefully get Jim Engel. I also want to have the arborists from Cornell with us as well. I think that's important. I think it would provide for a healthy discussion and healthy input. And we all have an opportunity to walk it. So what I would like to do is I will, as in my action item, I will follow up on this. Yes, Justin.
Sure. So along those lines, I also reached out to the DEC, and there is a consulting forester program.
Yes, there
we're in
is.
Region 8, and Garrett
Yep.
Copeland is our representative. I
Yep.
spoke with him on the phone today,
Mhm.
and he will actually do a free walkthrough with us on the land.
Absolutely, they will.
And he's enthusiastic to do that, so I would recommend that the board takes him up on that offer.
I have that information as
Um,
well. Thank you.
Great. And
Yes, thanks so much.
so he would like to talk with us, and he would, as a follow-up, prepare a forest stewardship plan.
Yep.
And so that would be kind of a classification of the different areas and some of the species, and some of the concerns that you might have about how that area is taken care of. So
Wonderful. I can't thank you
appreciate
enough for
this,
your,
and-
your research and for following up. And so my
Sure.
action item is I'm going to follow up with these people. We're going to set up a couple of times, hopefully, where we can meet up, maybe, you know, first thing in the morning, if that works for people, just, you know, as we start our day. Sooner than later, I'm going to try to arrange it as quickly as I can. How's that? Yes, Lily.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. And we should remember that since we are all together meeting, that it is a public
Yes,
meeting. And the
absolutely.
public will be,
Yep,
so we might think about that
yes.
as far as timing.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Jeff, did you have any additional thoughts or comments? I know we had spoken about a few things earlier.
Not really. I think this
Okay.
site visit is probably a good plan.
Yeah, okay,
I-
great. Yes,
I did
Dan?
have
Excuse me, Dan?
So just one last thing really
Mhm.
quick. I appreciate all the work and all the energy that everybody's putting into this and all the good thought and research. And I would love to see that same level of work being put in on how to solve 75 Monroe. Because I
Thank
feel
you.
like we're dropping the ball on that to spend all our time on this.
Yep, this is a big deal and so is that. Yep. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Justin, you had your hand up. We were just trying to close things
sure.
out here.
Just, yeah, I understand that and I appreciate it.
Mhm.
And I also agree with Trustee Keating, you know, and to me, this is getting in the way. I have no idea why we're even having this meeting about an
Mhm.
emergency that, in the opinion of several people that I've talked with,
Mhm.
there is no crisis, there is no emergency. This is a politicization of issues that are related
Wow.
to the environment
Wow.
and the ecology of that area. And I think that if we're really focused on solving issues that are important to taxpayers, you know, this is not a crisis situation. In fact, the crisis is that, you know, we're making this into something that is political when,
Okay.
Wow.
you know, it's to me, it's not.
Okay,
So
thank you for not making a political statement about that. Yes, Dan?
I just couldn't disagree with that more. There's nothing political about this whatsoever, and there's no proof of it. That's an outrageous
My
statement,
God.
and I want that in the record. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. Okay, so with that in mind, I think,
Dorothea has had her hand
yes,
up a while.
yes, and then we're closing this out. One more. Dorothea.
Hold
yeah.
on. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just coming back. We have several questions in the Q&A. I'm just asking for board direction.
We're not doing anything, so.
Yeah, in
them
other words, we're
into
doing
the
a site
record,
visit
or-
at this point, so I think why don't we, at least write the questions down, and maybe we can even get to them at the next meeting, because we obviously are continuing this, and I think maybe, in the interest of just, moving business forward this evening, it's probably the way to go at this point. Also, the next item about making the amendment just from Arboretum to Wildlife Sanctuary. I'm going to postpone that until the next meeting. I think it's important that the site visit occurs, and just putting that out there.
Thank you.
Yep, Lily?
Thank you. And may I ask that in addition, when we have that on the agenda the next time, that there's something included in the packet that would clarify for us why the name change is necessary.
Sure,
So that would be very helpful,
sure.
that information.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so with moving on then, we are going to go into executive session. I make a motion.
Oh, second. Trustee Keating. Sorry,
Oh,
guys. I
excuse me,
spoke
one
a lot.
second, Jeff.
I assume you don't need me for that.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Thanks so much, Jeff.
For me,
This is
Good
for
night, all.
employee matter.
Good night, all.
Thanks,
Motion- the
Jeff.
Motion is for employee matter.
yeah,
Thanks, Steve.
Okay,
Good night,
roll call.
Marina.
Trustee
Thank you, guys.
Lampier.
thank you. Talk to you later.
Roll call. Trustee Lampier.
Lanfear, aye.
Trustee Keating.
Keating, aye.
Trustee Lightgib.
like, bye.
Mayor Plummer.
Plummer, aye.
Okay, let me just dismiss the attendees.
Thank you.
We could do breakout rooms.
No, we can't.
All right, well, we have to stop recording or pause recording.
I will. I'm just getting
Yeah.
rid of people right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
No, no, no.
Oh, what did I do? I'm sorry.
We
That's
need
all right.
three different motions.
I'm sorry. Go-
That's
take me
okay.
through it.
First one, we're going to make a motion to incentivize the staff
Yes.
to get
Oh,
vaccinated
geez, after everything
and
we
to
talked about.
award the vacation day for everybody that has been vaccinated.
I'll make that motion.
Like, second.
Trustee Lampier,
Aye. Lanfear.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
trustee Lightgib,
like, bye.
Mayor Plummer.
Oh, Plummer, aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next one is for Steve Law to receive a raise of 1.5% in addition to his planned raise.
Effective when?
June 1st, I would go.
I'll
Makes life
make that
easier.
motion.
Lanfear, second.
Trustee Lampier,
Lanfear, aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
trustee Lightgib,
like, bye.
Mayor Plummer.
Plummer, aye.
Motion passes. Okay, I'm just gonna guess, I'm gonna guess this is what you want, to make a motion to
Yeah.
give Zach an additional $250 on top of the planned raise amount and incentivize additional raise upon performance.
Let me just amend that a little bit.
Okay,
An additional 250 effective June 1st, 2021,
mhm,
250 per hour. And with an additional 250 in 9 months should performance objectives be met.
Yeah, I think that's clear. Is there a second or a discussion?
Like a second. And
Okay.
just a small point for consideration. I'm okay either way, but wondering if we want to leave off, if we want to make the motion for the concrete raise that's being considered today, and then leave the other part up for discussion with the employee and further consideration of the board based on the benchmarks that are set.
No, it's not what we discussed. It's not what we agreed to. It disincentivizes them. It's too vague.
I mean, I think the motion is effective as it stands. You know,
So do you want to do a roll call?
we're at roll call.
Okay, trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Keating,
Eating eye.
trustee Lickett,
Like a bye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, I.
motion passes. Now a motion to adjourn.
There it is.
Sorry, I was jumping the gun. Oh, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Keating,
Eating eye.
trustee Lickett,
Like a bye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, I.
motion passes. Thank you. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
evening.
Have a good
Good
evening.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Hey, Dorothy, will you stay?